The White House press grounds were unusually tense that morning, the kind of tension that hums beneath polite smiles and carefully pressed suits. Reporters arrived earlier than usual, cameras were checked twice, and aides moved with clipped urgency. Word had spread quickly. Karoline Leavitt and Senator J.D. Vance were scheduled to speak together, an appearance that carried political weight far beyond its official billing. Karoline Leavitt, the youngest press secretary in modern memory, stood just inside the West Wing corridor, reviewing her notes with practiced calm. Her rise had been swift, scrutinized, and controversial, but no one could accuse her of lacking preparation. Today was not about headlines alone. It was about framing a message, setting a tone, and signaling direction. Every sentence would be dissected within minutes of being spoken. Outside, J.D. Vance stepped out of a black SUV and paused briefly, scanning the familiar facade of the White House. Once an outsider with a memoir that challenged elites, he now walked these grounds as a U.S. senator and one of the most watched voices in American politics. His presence alongside Leavitt was deliberate. This was not a coincidence of schedules, but a coordinated moment. Inside the briefing room, the front row filled fast. Veteran correspondents whispered to one another, speculating about policy signals, political alliances, and what this pairing meant ahead of a turbulent election cycle. The atmosphere felt less like a routine press briefing and more like a calculated statement of intent. When the doors opened, the room quieted instantly. Karoline Leavitt stepped to the podium first, her posture straight, expression composed. J.D. Vance followed, taking a seat just behind her, hands folded, eyes steady. The visual alone told a story: youth and experience, messaging and ideology, administration voice and legislative muscle. Leavitt began with prepared remarks, acknowledging recent economic concerns, foreign policy pressures, and domestic unrest. Her tone was firm but measured, confident without being combative. She spoke of responsibility, accountability, and a renewed commitment to the American worker. Each phrase was chosen carefully, echoing language that had been tested in internal meetings and late-night strategy calls. As she spoke, Vance listened attentively, occasionally nodding, his presence reinforcing the seriousness of the moment. This was not a solo performance. It was the opening act of a broader narrative, one designed to reassure supporters and challenge critics. By the time Leavitt concluded her opening remarks and gestured toward Senator Vance, the room was fully engaged. Pens hovered, fingers rested on camera triggers, and every reporter sensed the same thing. This was not just a briefing, it was a signal. Karoline Leavitt's strength had always been her ability to command a room without raising her voice. As questions began, she met each one directly, maintaining eye contact and refusing to be rushed. A reporter pressed her on economic disparities. Another questioned the administration's messaging strategy. Leavitt responded with clarity, weaving statistics with narrative, policy with principle. She spoke of economic resilience, of rebuilding trust between government and citizens, and of the administration's belief that communication itself was a form of leadership. People don't just want policy, they want honesty about where we are and where we're going. It was a line that would later be quoted repeatedly across news cycles. Critics had long painted her as a political operator rather than a communicator, but today she leaned into both roles unapologetically. She defended the administration's record while acknowledging public frustration, striking a balance that few press secretaries managed successfully. There was no visible hesitation, no retreat into vague talking points. When pressed about internal divisions, Leavitt didn't deflect. Instead, she reframed. Debate is not dysfunction, it's democracy in motion. The response drew murmurs across the room, some approving, others skeptical. Her composure under pressure became the quiet story of the hour. Even as questions sharpened, her tone remained steady. She did not personalize attacks or dismiss concerns. Instead, she positioned herself as a bridge between leadership and the public, between policy architects and everyday Americans. Throughout it all, J.D. Vance remained silent, but his presence loomed large. The cameras occasionally cut to him, capturing thoughtful expressions that suggested agreement rather than interruption. The pairing worked because it felt intentional. Leavitt as the voice, Vance as the weight behind it. As Leavitt concluded her portion, she turned slightly toward the senator. This administration believes in partnership, and Senator Vance is here today because the work ahead requires collaboration across institutions.
J.D. Vance rose slowly, adjusting his jacket as he approached the podium. His speaking style contrasted with Leavitt's, less polished, more conversational, but no less controlled. Where she delivered precision, he offered conviction. He began by grounding his remarks in personal experience, referencing communities often left out of policy discussions. Too many Americans feel like decisions are made far away by people who don't know their names, he said. That has to change. The line resonated immediately. Vance spoke about economic nationalism, cultural confidence, and restoring dignity to work. He framed these ideas not as partisan weapons, but as shared values. While his critics expected sharp rhetoric, he surprised some with a tone that was firm yet inclusive. He acknowledged disagreement openly. "We won't always agree on every method," he said, "but we agree on the goal, an America that works for its people." The statement subtly reinforced his alignment with the administration without erasing his independent identity. When asked about future ambitions, Vance deflected skillfully, redirecting the conversation back to legislative priorities. He spoke of responsibility over speculation, a move that earned nods from seasoned political observers. Behind him, Leavitt listened attentively, her earlier composure mirrored now in her restraint. The exchange felt coordinated but not scripted, a rare balance in modern political theater. By the time Vance concluded, the narrative was clear. This was a partnership rooted in shared messaging and strategic alignment, not convenience. Within minutes, the reaction began. Headlines flashed across screens. Pundits debated tone and implication, and social media erupted with clipped quotes and contrasting interpretations. Some praised the appearance as disciplined and effective. Others criticized it as overly calculated. Supporters highlighted Leavitt's poise and Vance's grounded rhetoric. Critics accused both of masking ambition behind unity. Yet even detractors conceded one thing: the appearance had been impactful. Cable news panels dissected body language, word choice, and political symbolism. Was this a signal of future leadership, a trial run for broader cooperation, or simply a moment of strategic messaging in a volatile cycle? Inside the White House, aides watched a coverage quietly. The goal had never been universal approval. It had been clarity, and that, they believed, had been achieved.
By evening, the briefing room was empty again, but the echoes of the morning remained. Karoline Leavitt returned to her office, already preparing for the next day's challenges. J.D. Vance boarded a flight back to the Senate, his remarks still circulating across the country. The appearance did not resolve debates or silence critics. It was not meant to. Instead, it marked a moment, one where messaging, leadership, and ambition briefly aligned in full public view. After the cameras shut off and reporters filtered out, the real work began. Inside a quiet conference room off the West Wing, Karoline Leavitt met briefly with senior advisors, replaying key moments from the briefing. Every phrase was examined, not for regret, but for resonance. In modern politics, impact is measured not only by what is said, but by how it travels. Leavitt removed her press badge and leaned back slightly, allowing herself a rare moment of reflection. The briefing had gone as planned, but she knew the aftershocks would define its success. Social media narratives were already forming, some supportive, others hostile. Her job was no longer just to respond, but to anticipate. J.D. Vance joined the meeting moments later. The dynamic shifted subtly, not hierarchical, but collaborative. He spoke candidly about the mood in the Senate, about lawmakers who were watching closely and voters who were listening even more carefully. People are tired of noise, he said. They're looking for signals of seriousness. The conversation turned strategic. What did today's appearance unlock? What doors did it close? The advisors spoke in careful terms, avoiding grand predictions. They understood that alignment, once visible, creates expectations, and expectations are political currency, powerful but risky. Leavitt emphasized consistency. One moment doesn't build trust, she said. Repetition does. Her focus remained on discipline, on making sure that future briefings reinforced rather than contradicted the narrative introduced that morning. Vance, for his part, stressed authenticity. People can smell performance, he warned. If this looks staged later, it loses its force. It was a reminder that credibility once earned must be protected. As the meeting ended, both understood that the public appearance was only the beginning. The real test would come in quieter moments, in follow-up interviews, legislative battles, and crises yet to unfold. Politics rarely rewards single performances, it rewards endurance. They parted without ceremony, returning to separate responsibilities, but the collaboration,